Hello and welcome to RollsignGallery's YouTube channel. Today's project is we're going to take this empty frame of an electronic sign and we're going to completely rebuild it from the inside out. This sign was part of a Luminator GTI Max sign. It was one that I converted to run the guts of a Gulton Luminator sign from, and that's why there's a hole in it. That won't come into play though with the rebuilding of it. The sign itself will not have the fluorescent tube as of right now because I'm missing one bracket for it. But we are going to put the rest of the guts into it and get it basically from an empty frame with nothing in it to a completely working sign. Now the first thing I'm going to do is set the points where all the nuts and bolts that are going to hold the circuit boards on. These will hold on the processor board, the controller board, and the power board for the sign, and we'll keep it in place on the back door of it. Now these will just simply slide along that guideline. Just go in there, slide it along. Go in there, slide it along until all of them are lined up. The other thing I'm going to set is the nuts for the ballast for the fluorescent tube. Even though it won't have one, I'm going to put them in there and get them ready to be hooked up for when I do have one. Now with all the bolts in place along the guideline there, we're going to get the circuit boards that are going to go into there. And I've already got a few selected. That's the processor board. That's a little power transfer board. Or that's the controller board, and there's power supply. So we're going to take all of those and we're going to bring them over here. And get them lined up. Now the bolts aren't set up yet. I gotta put them in place first like this and then be able to figure out which way is which. So we started with that power transfer board there. We'll use that as the basis for everything. Then we'll use the processor board here. That goes next in line. And just sort of slide it into slide it onto the bolts there. And then just loosely for now screw those on. Wait, yeah. And then we'll tighten these fully once all the boards are put in and in the places we want them. Okay. Next is the power board. That will go in here. Oops, have to spread those out a little. Now we're making sure that this 5-pin connector is on the top on all three boards. That's where we want it, because we'll have a cable that'll connect all three of those together. Put that in loose. Put that in loose. And then the last one. Now the idea, or the goal that I had, and I'm going to achieve it with this, is to have this board past the gap in the back of the sign there. It was something that I did to this box when I got it when I was a lot younger and didn't have all the resources that I do today. So I improvised. Making sure all the bolts are in there. There. And there. Alright, and then just shove it over a little bit. And we'll lock them in. That one there. And one more. Okay, and there's all the circuit boards in place. Okay, next up are all the internal cables that I'll need to distribute the power and the signals throughout the inside of the sign. I have some that were already set aside. You have this one to supply power from the power board out the back of the sign to the keypad. We have this, I'll do this first. There's our ballast. This one's a 12 volt ballast because it's got a black cover on it, or black painted. It's not white painted. We have the power wire that'll connect all three circuit boards. Alright. We have the data wire for inside the sign. Now this one I had to partially construct myself. Normally they have this red connector on the end of it. This one's actually from a side sign, not from a front sign. And I didn't have any extra front signs. So what I did, with a little bit of ingenuity, is created a gap in the middle and used part of an internal SCSI cable to create what I need to make contact on the boards. You'll see that later. So you have all of that. Then we have an internal power wire. This is also actually from a side sign, but it will work too. And finally, we have the data wires that go from the controller board to each display panel that will be in the sign eventually. So we'll bring all those over, bring all of these over, and let's get to building. Okay. Now I already have the one power wire here from this distribution board. This one actually needs to switch over. And we'll bring that over to the power board here. All of these are just being loosely connected for right now. I'll eventually tie them down and make it a little more neater. This one's for power. We're going to connect the power board to here, or the power wire to here rather. That'll send the power throughout the entire body. And in this end, again, it'll be tidied up. But this end plugs into here and goes out the back of the body of the sign. This is for the ballast. Now this one here is something I'm going to have to work with eventually. But for right now, just to get the display working, we don't need to. So right now we'll just leave it all sort of like that. Put those aside. The ballast will go over there. Alright. The data cable that I created, this will go in over here onto the data connection on the controller board. The rest of it will get run through here, down this way. A lot of extra cable because again this used to be from a side sign, not a front sign. And this one will get plugged into here with that creative connection that I made. See, this is why I kept it loose though, because I may have to adjust this to make room for it. And then these two will go out through the back of the sign. So you have your connectors out the back to go to the keypads, side signs, etc. like that. And finally, we have the power wire for the keyboard. That'll go out through there. Now this does kind of look, you know, sort of all over the place, but we'll tidy that up in a minute. The last one we have is the power wire that connects all the circuit boards. These go onto this 5-pin one that I mentioned earlier, and they connect all three of them together, just like that. Now the next stage will be to install the display panels and tidy this up some, make it more presentable. Now most front signs normally have this little board here in it, but because of the fact that I'm using a side sign power wire instead of a front one, I'm going to bypass this. So we're actually going to take this out of the sign. It's not really a necessary part. It just, you know, it's sort of a stopgap between the power connections and the internal SCSI cable, which this sign isn't going to have one anyway, because everything's done with multiple transfer cards and things like that, so it's not really necessary. The MTU doesn't normally work with it either, so we're not going to bother with that. So we're going to scoot these over just a little bit further and sort of tighten it down now. That's pretty much going to be in the spots that they're going to stay in. Those are all tied down, and the power wire that I showed you before is actually going to go straight to the power board like so, and then this brings that closer to where the ballast will be. So hopefully that'll help later on. Now one final thing for doing the connectors here is putting them into the body of the sign. To make it compatible with other Luminator signs, the flat side of each of these has to be facing that way, towards the closest side of the sign. So we're going to make sure that all of those are lined up, which they appear to be already, and lock them in. Flat side over, lock it in. Flat side, lock it in. And one more, flat side is right, so try and lock it in. This one's being stubborn. Now all the connectors are lined up the way they should be. Now we'll add the display panels. Okay, we're going to get the display panels out now. These were 3 that I recovered from a bus that was at a scrapyard. The box was unable to be removed, but I was able to gut all the parts from it. So I was able to salvage the 3 panels that make up the display. I'm going to bring this over here, set them down gently. I'm going to take our sign and we're going to we'll take the door off altogether since nothing's attached yet, and we will flip the sign down just because it'll be easier to do it that way. Okay, with the sign down and ready to be loaded with the display panels, we'll get those in. These already have little, not really bolts, but they're inserts to hold the display panels in. So put that in, line it up with those holes. They kind of just pop in if you get them right. Put one there. Put one of them over here. Carefully. Then slide it down. And then the one for the middle, which I'm probably going to have to put the camera down for. So we'll be right back. Okay, so you got the third panel in. We'll just rotate them slightly to get them to fit into those grooves and into the locking spots. And we'll take our screwdriver, push down and rotate. Push down, rotate. Push down, rotate. And we'll do this for all three of them on all three display pins. Last one. Now these will now be held in place and be visible from the front of the sign. So flip it up again. We'll put the back door back onto it and hold it down. And now we're ready for the final pieces, which are the data transfer cables from the controller board to each panel. Now before we do that, real quick, I'm going to get the ballast put onto its spot. And at this point would also be a good time to permanently attach all the circuit boards to the back door of the sign. Okay, so got our little screw head here, and we'll get these attached to the body all the way on, make it permanent. Okay. Right. And one more. And we'll take our 10mm one. The other one was an 8mm. This is 10. And we'll permanently attach the ballast onto the board. Again, the lights won't be added on this video because I'm missing one bracket to hold the ballast on, but we will get the sign operating for the flip dot display. So the next part now is to connect these data wires to these connectors here. Now there's only 3 wires because there's only 3 panels. There's a short one, we got a long one, we got a medium one. Now if the video will show it, you can see it actually says on the circuit board to first board, to second board, to third board, etc. That's the order that they get connected in. So we'll take the short one because it's the shortest distance, and we'll connect one to there, like so, and we'll connect the other to the back side of the display panel. And well, lock it in. Okay, so once again, because I needed both hands, I had to connect all of those without holding the camera. But as you see, we got one connected to each display panel now, and we'll connect them in the same order to the controller board over here. This one will go, actually it's backwards. We'll go in like that, locked in, and the third one will go in the third spot. Kind of a bit of a clustered up area, but that's okay. Actually, it's backwards too. Well, at least I'm consistent. So we'll just sort of loop it around. Insert it into third slot. And that should be everything. All the connectors are in, all the cables are in. The sign is assembled. Next, to see if it all works. Okay, so we have our keypad, our power wire to the keypad, our data wire, and the power wire that goes to my power supply over there. Now, for the people who probably know just as much about these as I do, probably noticed that there wasn't any memory chips in here. During the break, I installed some memory chips from Grand River Transit, which is Kitchener and Cambridge, Ontario. Hopefully this will work with those chips into it. So we'll do up the sign, seal it up carefully, and lock the body in. Okay, with all the back door screws in place, we're now going to get the keypad hooked up. This one for the data, and this one for the power to the keypad, and finally the power to the sign system as a whole. Locked in with the keypad, and hopefully with everything connected together, it all works. There you go. And we come around here, and our built from scratch sign is working perfectly. Hope you enjoyed this video. It's fun to make these things. I do it for a living. I've sold to different transit companies throughout Canada and the US, and all working from my shop here in my garage. This is RollsignGallery.com's YouTube page. Thanks for viewing, and feel free to check out my other videos on my channel.